welcome to this session of the National Hard-Boiled Festival entitled Up Close and Personal with the Queen of Noir, Vicki Hendricks. Vicki Hendricks is the author of novels Miami Purity, You Wanna Love, Voluntary Madness, Sky Blues, Fur People, and Cruel Poetry. The latter a finalist for an Edgar Award in 2008. Among her collections of short fiction, we have Florida Gothic Stories and Dangerous Sex, 3 stories. Vicki was born in Covington, Kentucky, and lives in Hollywood, Florida. She holds a Master's of Fine Art and is an emeritus professor of creative writing at Broward College. Hello, Vicki, and thank you so much for being here with us in this festival and for allowing the Argentine people, authors, and readers to get to know you and your work. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really didn't know that anything of mine was available in Argentina, but I'm so glad it is.
Yes,
it must have gone through a publisher and they didn't send me one of the books.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Well, hopefully we'll get more books translated into Spanish to make them available. I mean, it would be wonderful.
There is one more. Fur People is Gente Peluda, and you can get that. I know Amazon, Barnes & Noble, it's just an ebook, but I know you can get that.
Okay, that's good to know. And that's an amazing novel, too, that you wrote. And but we'll talk about it in a minute about that.
Okay.
Shall we start, do you think?
Sure, sure.
Okay. My first question is, how hard is it to publish in the US as a woman and as a writer in general?
Well, it's just really hard for anybody, you know, in the first place. And now I think worse than ever because there are so many people with what's available to do your own ebook, and it just makes it sound like anybody can put a novel out there, and so there's so much competition to get publishers because more people have the idea of doing it. They don't realize that the writing of the novel is really the hard part, but then you have to work to get it published after that. It's just always been really hard, but maybe worse now. I think maybe women have a leg up a little bit now because, you know, women's subjects are really hot. Third wave of feminism is on, and I don't know, men are kind of on the downside. So I think it might be easier for women. You know, in the past, yeah, there were more men, and maybe people have gotten tired of them. I don't know. I'm just taking wild guesses here.
That's a positive thing to hear, I think, personally.
Well, it's good for me.
Right, that's correct. So following this writing hardship of getting published, in Argentina, it was not until recent, right, that we have disseminated and recognized hard-boiled female writers. It's been a male-dominated genre. So my question is, how do you see the evolution of the hard-boiled female writer in our country here in the United States?
Well, I really didn't know about any of it before I started writing. So, but after that, I started becoming acquainted with some of the other hard-boiled female writers, and there were actually quite a few starting in the 40s and going through the 70s. Patricia Highsmith, you've probably heard a lot about, and you know, she's probably the most well-known. Her novels were made into movies, and she's one of the greats, no doubt about it. And she has, I don't know, 20, 30 novels. But she died the summer that my book came out, Miami Purity, my first one. So I kind of took that up without knowing it, and it turned into the neo-noir. But, we had kind of a more maybe domestic, but still murderous hard-boiled in the past. Vera Caspary, Dorothy Hughes, Margaret Millar, there were some women making, a living writing. I don't know if it's more hard-boiled or more noir, and the definitions of those are so overlapping that, it's hard to sort it out anyway. But those were not as well known, of course, as Dashiell Hammett, Raymond Chandler, Mickey Spillane, David Goodis. Those guys were, of course, much more prominent. But, once you dig into it, there are quite a few women all along. Now, I think, there are still plenty of men writing. James Elroy, Walter Mosley. I don't see so many hard-boiled women writing now. There were a few, and Megan Abbott is a particular friend of mine. Sarah Paretsky, of course, she was earlier. She was ongoing. S.J. Roseanne, Krista Faust. There's a few of us, but it really works out if you're a hard-boiled female writer, because when they're making up panels for book festivals, there aren't many choices. So that's probably how you found me. But, I always get put in there with a panel full of guys, and that's great.
Well, in Argentina, it has not been until more recent that we have a lot of female writers, and the hardboiled is really, really popular in Argentina and the whole Hispanic world. Do you think that it's as relevant as a genre in the United States today?
I think so. And then, in that same category, you have detective fiction, police procedurals. There's just, and then, you have the cozy mysteries, which of course aren't the same, but I think people have always just been interested in murder and mysteries, and I really don't see any of that slowing down. Hard-boiled noir in particular hasn't been a very popular category other than the big names, I think. I don't know. I've been told that noir itself, which doesn't usually, the classic noir doesn't really have a detective as the main character. And I think more people are interested in the detective types, maybe, than when the main character is the murderer. I don't know, it takes a certain kind of brain to like that. And that's what I like.
I love hardboiled. I got to, when I was doing my doctorate, I did my dissertation on hardboiled, and I have been reading hardboiled ever since I started my PhD, and it's fascinating to me as a scholar because it's kind of like a social novel, right? It's a social novel that allows you to dig in about what's happening in society, and
exactly. I guess I've never been that interested in what the intellectuals are doing and the wealthy people are doing as much as the people that are scrabbling for a living, which is what you generally get in hard-boiled. I guess that's part of the definition, really.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yes, totally. I mean, we get the opportunity to show all the problems, the issues that a society experiment, and I mean, we don't really care about, how the murder was committed. We care about why was it committed.
Exactly. I never read whodunits because I don't care. It's going through that crime and seeing what brought those people to that point. And in noir, we often say, they're already dug into the ground, and then they just dig deeper, until they're completely buried at the end. So there's not any redemption in real noir. And I suppose in Hardboiled there is, because the detective goes in one side and comes out victorious, but you know, that's a slightly different thing. But yes, and I don't see any of these social problems going away real soon. So I think Hardboiled is going to continue to have subject matter.
I agree. I think that it's going to continue. My next question is, I know that you, no, I'm sorry. I believe that the only novel of yours translated into Spanish was the Cruel Poetry. Now you said that Fur People is also available, but talking about cruel poetry, in your opinion, from a gender perspective, what does it convey?
I think, like most of my novels, I didn't intend for it to really convey anything important. I suppose, and I feel like I exaggerate things to the point where they're not completely realistic. You know, it's one notch off from realism. But I think what comes out in there is what I feel all the time, you know, that women can be just as bad as men, and they can think thoughts just as sexual and, you know, be as cruel and obsessive. Now, I have trouble with people finding that my characters are not sympathetic, but to me, they're sympathetic. They, you know, there's something in their psychology that causes them to get completely turned around and do things they shouldn't be doing, but they rationalize without realizing it and thinking, you know, they've got to do this. It's the right thing for them. And women do that just as much as men. I don't think that's so much that people think like that now as much as they used to, that women were pure and, you know, above all of these sexual thoughts and you know, impulses. But when I first wrote Miami Purity, there were a lot of people that were shocked by that, and mainly women, and you know, the men who said, "Geez, you know, I never had a girlfriend like that, or that reacted like that." And you know, you just say, "Well, I guess you just weren't doing what you needed to get the sexual peak there." the passion, the obsession, all those things that I really love to read about and write about, those were somehow upsetting to some people. Of course, now we have 50 Shades of Grey. So,
Right.
you know, yeah. But that was in the mid-90s. I think my editor thought it was going to be a major selling point, and maybe it wasn't, you know, as terrible as he thought. He did, you know, Bret Easton Ellis' American Psycho,
Mm-hmm.
and it got into all kinds of trouble. Somebody else didn't publish it that was supposed to, and he picked it up. And I guess he felt that Miami Purity was as, you know, scandalous as that. But I really don't think it ended up, you know, being that way. I think people were more ready for the sex, whereas, you know, it really wasn't in any of those earlier women's noir writers.
Yes, and I'm going to ask you a few questions about that, about the graphics sex that is in the novels, and we'll get to that.
Okay.
Now, let me ask you this. Argentina is a country with a lot of domestic violence, sex trafficking, femicides, now intensified by what we're dealing with this pandemic that we're dealing with. And we have that in the United States as well. Does your work reflect this concern of women violence towards women?
Well, my women are usually the source of the violence, the women characters. So there is some in cruel poetry, and the idea of prostitution, is in there. But I was trying to have the woman in control. So again, I didn't really write that with serious concerns. I have concerns for women, of course, but I don't know if my fiction, that's not really what drives me. It's more of, I don't know, I guess the pleasure in reading Hard Boiled, rather than as a lesson or that I can cure something.
Yes, it kind of subverts, right? Subverts the norm of where the male is the one who inflicts the violence, and this is kind of like flipped to the other side.
Yeah, the women are the toughest in the books. And, maybe that's just my own feelings, coming out, or my own fantasy. I don't know. It just didn't come naturally.
Now, going back to the sexual content of your novels, they're frequently connected to the erotica genre or and graphic sex. So how have they been perceived in the past and now are regarded in the U.S.? And why do you choose to intertwine them with hardboiled too? I mean,
well, I think I got into hardboiled and graphic sex kind of accidentally. James M. Cain, one of the hard-boiled writers from, I guess he started in the 40s. He's been gone quite a while now, but he's really the one that I became just crazed about. Hammett, Chandler, those people, again, too much detective for me. But when I found Cain, I was just obsessed. And his novels, they're so condensed. And when he was writing them, I mean, they're so passionate, and yet he couldn't really put, graphic sex into them. And I just was amazed by, what he did. And so how I got into probably the graphic sex was thinking, I can't do it. I can't get that passion on the page the way Cain did it. Because I don't know how he did it. So I had to do it my own way, and I felt the times were ready for it. Although Miami Purity was my thesis for my master's, and that was kind of funny. People asking me questions about it, and I mean, I had to give pretty graphic answers sometimes. It made for a fun discussion, but it also happened because I had an assignment in one of the classes where you had to choose a model for your novel. Not that you would ever write this, maybe, but and you sort of looked at the math, like how many scenes, how many characters, how much dialogue, and how many pages. And this was from James W. Hall. I don't know if you're probably familiar with him. He's very well known in Florida and all over the United States, pretty much. But he taught the course, and so we each had to pick a book. And Postman Always Rings Twice was only, the paperback I had was about 100 pages. So other people were picking Lolita and Catch-22, and I thought, oh my God, that's insane, because you had to write a third of the novel, what would be a third in manuscript pages for that course, which was, a few months. So 53 manuscript pages was all I needed to do Postman. So, and I loved it anyway. So that's really how I got into that, and putting in all the sects and writing noir, because it's the classic noir. The love triangle, betrayal, and so I put those into mine, different places, different types of people, but it was really modeled after Cain. Sorry. And then, a couple years after graduate school, it got published, which was a big surprise to me. And then people liked it, so I continued to use those same elements, which I enjoyed in the first place. So that's really how that all went together, and just progressed from there into other things.
I read the cruel poetry, and when I didn't know that you incorporated graphic sex or erotica, however you want to call it, and I was surprised. Because in Argentina, that I know of, and I read a lot of hardboiled because I write scholarly in the Hispanic world a lot. I haven't seen female writers who would be so graphic about sex. And so I really enjoyed it, and I was like, well, why this is pleasing to me? I mean, it's just a way of intimacy to the character. I mean, it's kind of like when you had the Italian realism and you saw the character in the movies go into the bathroom. It's like it gives you a different feeling of the person. You get to see and explore other parts of the personality of the character that are usually just shunned from the novel, from the character.
Yes, yes. It's a part of life. So I guess it was, just sort of a puritanistic kind of thing to stop when the clothes come off. That's what most of them still do. And I would get a lot of people saying, well, you don't really need all that sex. But if you think about it, and maybe sometimes I didn't, but again, nobody ever told me to take it out who had any authority, and I just went with it. But you also have the power dynamic in sex, which if you're just writing something that's only meant to be erotic, it's pretty boring to me, like a porn movie. They're really boring for the most part. I don't know, not for everybody apparently, but if there's no real plot, there's nothing really on the line and no conflict, you're not getting anywhere. But with hard-boiled or noir, the sex can be useful as a manipulative part of it, or who's got the power, who's on top. It's really, it fits in there so well, and it just seemed to help convey my characters and their lives. Cruel poetry, of course, is just based on her life as a prostitute mostly, and so I just thought I had license to put plenty of it in there.
And it also adds to her, to the character, about defining who she is and how she just does not, it's about her pleasure, it's about her, and men are not really that meaningful.
Miami Purity, my first one, and in all of mine, actually, there are always animals. There's always an animal that's pretty key in there. And that one had a dog, Radar, and she felt somewhat sexual. Sherry was the character's name, toward Radar. And I think, that's one thing the editor balked at a little bit. And because I think I had a full page, I didn't have, real sex, no penetration, that was definitely not in there. But he felt that it was maybe a little bit too much, having her so cozy with the dog. And so I had to cut it down to a couple of sentences. But the reason I put that in there was to show that in case anybody thinks she's just doing this, pretending to feel so sexual to this man because she wants something, that the dog would show that she's just very sexual. And so, it stayed. It was very short, but
You did it.
yeah. I don't know how it went over. I didn't hear much about that. That's one thing, when you write the book and it gets published, people don't often quote parts to you, once in a great while, but it could be very embarrassing to have some of those parts quoted, I think. But you never have to. Hardly.
And not only you have explored the erotica and the neo-noir, but you also have explored the Gothic. And I am fascinated by the hybridity of these popular genres, and I use it in my scholarly work. So it has quite a presence of this convergence of hardboiled and Gothic in the Hispanic world. How does Gothic intermingle with the neo-noir? What does each genre allow you to communicate? And have you ever conversed them in a specific text?
I have. I'm not sure how I got started into the Gothic part of it. There's Southern Gothic, which is Flannery O'Connor, and you have, the freakishness, the grotesque, and you have the dark humor, and you often have some oppression, transgressive thoughts, all these things that make up the Gothic. Plus, then you have the supernatural, which is in like the Poe, Edgar Allan Poe type Gothic. And I've always, read both of those. I've always been a real Poe fan and also a Southern Gothic fan. So I don't know if that's how it came about. I really can't say if, I don't know, they might be my influences, but it seemed to kind of just go that way at some point. I really don't have much Gothic in the novels, I don't think. Maybe a little bit in Fur People, but I don't think in the hard-boiled, mostly in the short stories. And I do have a couple. I don't know if you want to hear about specific ones.
Sure.
Okay, like Stormy Mon Amour. It's in my Florida Gothic stories. And it's about a girl who gets impregnated by a dolphin and gives birth to a mermaid. Well, I wrote this for somebody's noir collection, and there was quite a stink because, I don't know, people have feelings about mermaids or something, and they were, upset, or dolphins maybe. The idea of this young woman having sex with a dolphin. I got lots of emails after that telling me of people they knew who actually did this. But I was just making it up, I thought. I'm always kind of on the edge of making it up and wondering if it could be real. That's how I like to do it. I don't want to go so far into the supernatural that it's absolutely beyond real. But there's always a little ambiguity there, just a little bit of, well, could it really? And in Stormy, okay, you have to kind of accept the mermaid. That's in the, I don't know, first paragraph of the story that she gives birth. But then the story is really about her relationship with the dolphin. And she's in love with him and believes that he returns her love. So that's really the part that maybe it's real, maybe it's not. And it's not a very happy ending, but I don't want to tell you in case somebody reads it. but you've got that grotesque in there, kind of the whole, and the transgressive, part of having sex with a dolphin, and that's kind of a sacred creature also. The one thing was really odd about that, and this happens to me sometimes. I put out a very strange idea or detail. And then I find out that it's real somewhere. And in this case, there was actually, I had been to Peru and had read about dolphin myths and things like that. And there's part of that in the story. But I read after my story that there was a little baby born with legs that looked like a mermaid, and they called it the mermaid baby. Now, they were able to separate her legs and she was fine. But I was like, oh no, there really was a mermaid. And of course she didn't, take to the water. Well, I don't know, because I really didn't hear anything more about it. It was just a news story. But I thought, wow, this is a little scary that, but, and the myth, says that the dolphins would come out of the river and put hats over their blowholes so that they could lure the girls in the villages. And, that's what they were luring them for. So it's, it was kind of funny that all, came to haunt me afterwards.
To haunt you. So, following this conversation, how does your creative process work on a plot? And you've been telling me that, like just now, but what is the progression that you follow to materialize, say, hard-boiled novel, for instance? Do you research about life events and then construct a fictional story? Tell us a little bit about that, please.
Well, I used to be able to rely on my own experiences. I was kind of an adventure freak, I guess. And although it didn't seem like that, I went into scuba diving and sailing and skydiving. I guess that qualifies more than anything, because there aren't that many people who go into skydiving, especially women. And so I took a lot of my research straight from those things. Iguana Love was scuba diving, sky blues, skydiving. Sailing is blended into some of my stories. But, mainly I think, what I do is sentence by sentence. It's a very painful process, building on characters that start at the beginning. Iguana Love, for example, I took from an experience, but it was meeting this woman who was obsessed with iguanas. And I had gotten an iguana myself. I don't know why, but I had ferrets, iguanas, cats, and iguanas do not get along with ferrets, or should I say ferrets don't get along with iguanas. But the ferrets and the cats got along. Anyway, when I got the iguana, I really didn't know anything about it. I don't know what possessed me. But I was looking for people who had experience, and I found this woman, and she had a cage for sale, a $3,000 cage with a waterfall and all kinds of special lighting and everything. And so I ended up going over to look at that, even though I could never afford to buy that cage or would, go that far. But, and she turned out to be a really interesting person. So when I first started, I called this iguana woman, and it was going to be this woman as the main character. And then, I don't know, it got off of that because, okay, I got my iguana care book, and this is the one novel I can really tell you how it happened, how it developed thematically along with the character. Because in that book it said, no matter how much you shower your iguana with love, it will never return your love. It will never love you. It was like a big warning in the book. And, along with what to feed it, monkey chow and give it hibiscus and, and then it's like, but don't think it's going to return your love. And I thought, oh man, that describes so many people and so many relationships. And this iguana woman, after getting to know her a little bit more than I even wanted to, She had lots of boyfriend problems and would call me up in the middle of the night with those problems. And I just started to see that. And I met other women with iguanas, and I swear they all had these boyfriend problems. And it just, I don't know, it's weird. It's like now I know all these cat women, and they all have some of the same problems. Not all of them, I can't say that, and I hope none of them are listening. But but this woman, she had video of her with an iguana on her shoulders, you know, dancing. She had a little tombstone on her windowsill. His name was Chupa. She had little sucker bites all over her arms that the iguana had died 3 months earlier and they hadn't healed yet. I mean, it was a true case of obsession with an animal that can't return your love, or at least can't show you that it loves you because it doesn't know how. So this was really the relationship in the novel between Ramona and Enzo. And they're both iguanas, not just Enzo, both of them.
That was a very interesting story. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Now, you have several novels that have not been translated into Spanish. Which one do you think should be the next novel available to Spanish readers, and why?
Miami Purity is probably the most kind of universal because it's not focused on scuba diving or skydiving or iguanas. It's you know, people who work in a dry cleaners. So that's maybe more universal. It was my first one and the one that got the most publicity, and everybody seems to like that the best, except for me. I really like Voluntary Madness. So I would choose Voluntary Madness, but only because I like it. And I think it's so different from anything I've read or any of my other novels. It's there's really no murder. There is a death, but there's no murder in it. But it's criminal because these down and out people, a young woman and her older alcoholic boyfriend go to Key West and plan to spend her little bit of inheritance living it up and then kill themselves. So, you know, it's very noir. And they run out of money early on, of course. So they start getting food from restaurants and not paying, getting carryouts and not paying. And then that soon evolves into holding up restaurants and customers, and, you know, but it's not really a murder like my others, but I just enjoy that. And it has a really good dog in it.
But it does have a criminal plot that it can be put into some sort of what we call novela negra or neo-noir type of setting, I think. I mean, I think that just these labels that we have, they're, you know, just labels, and there's a lot of things that fluctuate within that genre.
Yes, even Fur People, if you really look at it, is a noir novel. It's not a hard-boiled. There is a gun, but you know, it's misdemeanors because to keep that many animals, to hoard animals, is a crime, and so it does have crime. But you know, that's not in any genre really. I don't know what you would call it. I wish the genres weren't so strict, because I never really fit into any of them very well, except noir, which is such a small, you know, genre and little known really comparatively.
Talking about Fur People, I know it's not a hardboiled novel, but it deals with animal hoarding, which is a very relevant topic worldwide. And it takes place in the woods of Central Florida. So how does your Southern upbringing and your love for nature permeate through this specific text?
I forgot to mention, you had that I still live in Hollywood, Florida, but when I retired, I moved to Central Florida, so that's how we got there. But and I don't know if I'm that Southern. I was born in Kentucky, but raised in Ohio, so it's kind of a borderline thing. You know, Kentucky can be Southern, but I really was more Ohio. However, my mother was raised in Kentucky, and I think I took a lot of her way of speaking. I think somehow the voice of my characters comes from my mother, and it's probably embedded in me too. People used to ask me how I do that all the time, and I'd always say the voice, you know, going down in grammar is much easier than going up. So I think, you know, that's my Southernness right there. But my love for nature definitely, you know, gets in here. And living here in Central Florida, there are a lot of homeless people, and also there was a character involved. Am I answering this question? Because now I forget what it was.
Yes, you're answering just fine.
Okay. So I knew of a woman. I didn't actually know her. It seems to work really well for me if I get details about somebody through somebody else. It's almost better than meeting the person, because I guess I just retain the important parts. I'm not really sure, but I heard about this woman who had all these animals and lived in a school bus. And so I, you know, I've always been interested in the animals, and I just placed that, you know, where I live now, and got to use all the nature I wanted, because she's really fighting against nature all the time, not having money, and she's also fighting against society because, of course, people don't want her to have so many animals. It's not good. And, you know it's not good too. I could do it myself. I have to be careful. I had 9 cats at one point, but I was very young, very young. Now I just have 4. But, you know, when you love animals, you think that you can do the best for them. And past a certain point, obviously you can't. And past a certain age, it gets harder and harder. That's why I don't think you hear so much about younger hoarders. But then when they get older, their system and their ability to handle everything breaks down. And that's when you get all the, you know, cat ladies and their problems. But so, you know, I really used everything here. I had a friend with a restaurant in that park, and I used her, and I used the restaurant, and I used all the people who worked in there. They were actual people, although then I invented the ones who were really involved in the plot. I didn't put anybody in there. None of the plot was real, other than there are hoarders, and I did know of a hoarder like that. But she was actually in, I don't know, what was it, Wyoming or something, I think. But I don't know. It's just, you know, this is the one novel where I really do have a purpose, way beyond entertainment, because of all the problems with feral cats and dogs, you know, that don't have homes. I mean, the number, I did research when I was doing the book, and the number of animals that are put down, you know, because there's no place for them is just ridiculous, you know, and everybody's trying to take care of this problem. But the main thing is people just can't let their animals go out and have babies and keep spreading them all over. So I work a lot taking in feral cats to get spayed and neutered, and then returning them back to, you know, where they're being fed by somebody. But so I had a social purpose in that one novel, and I probably like that the best. But you know, it's not hard boiled, really.
My daughter has lots of cats, several cats, and works at a shelter, and she's always asking me, "Can I bring this cat home? Can I bring this cat?" And
how many have you let her bring?
well, she spends a week with us and a week with her mom. So she has them at her mom's, but she's trying to bring some over here, and she had several there at her mom's. But I'm like, no more cats. No more cats.
Well,
So,
see, that's generally the male trait there. And we're against that.
so
You would
interesting.
love to have a cat. Let me just tell you that.
Oh, I've had cats many times. Yeah,
Oh, okay, good, good.
love cats too. Now let me ask you this: Miami Purity is considered a redneck noir by some people. I've heard that. So, can you explain a little bit about that? Maybe start explaining to the Argentine audience what is redneck and how it redneck translates maybe to this novel. And
Well, again, I didn't know I was writing redneck noir until James Elroy put it on, in a blurb on the back of my first novel, Miami Purity. And he also called it white trash, which I found insulting for my characters. I really didn't like that. And I think, by redneck, of course, originally it meant farmers, I guess, or, people working out in the sun that couldn't get jobs indoors, I suppose. And so that, that's kind of a critical word in a way. And white trash was definitely critical. So I didn't know I was doing that. But then I just found this is a layer of society that I guess I know enough about, and also I feel comfortable with, and I find interesting. So, I don't know, it just worked for me. And, I think, the street smarts is part of it. These people are not educated generally. If you're talking about rednecks, you consider that not educated, maybe less refined than upper classes, more smoking. When I was writing this, they were, I thought, drinking Jack Daniel's whiskey, which I kind of just made up, but seemed to be true. Now I guess there's more meth involved, probably, but and that's, I don't know, seems to be a lot worse. But the country expressions, maybe I got a little from my mother, and all of this stuff just kind of worked together for me, and that's how I got into redneck noir. But there are quite a few. Again, not too many women. I can't think of a woman doing redneck noir. Now, maybe I just haven't found them. If you know of any, please tell me. But because I know I would like it. But we do have Daniel Woodrell for the rednecks in the Ozarks, and Joe Lansdale in Texas. These are very well known. Daniel Woodrell, of course, did Winter's Bone, which became a film. And so, and he's got lots of wonderful redneck noir books. The Death of Sweet Mister. I love that one. Then there's actually Greg Barth in Kentucky. Do you know of him?
no, what?
Oh, okay. Well, he has a series of books about a woman, Selena. And that was a few years ago. I also know of Willie Lawton. He's in Nevada. Warren Moore, Cincinnati. I'm not sure if he's really redneck, but I'm from Cincinnati, and somehow I'm in with the redneck. So I, put that in there too. But they're. I think it's for men. It's more acceptable, maybe somehow. Or there are more men that like to read about those kinds of people than women. I don't know, because I don't know why there aren't more women that deal with what is called redneck noir.
So I
But
guess we can say that there is such a thing as a
yes,
subgenre or a genre, or how do you call it, that is redneck
yeah. Well,
literature.
people are always making up new subgenres. Scuba noir. I think Iguana Love's the only one in there, but
I wonder if there are dissertations about this redneck literature. I have no idea, but it'll be interesting to find out. So, Vicki, are you writing right now? What are you writing?
Well, I've been on a break for several months now. Something about the being locked down. We're not really locked down anymore, but I don't know. People aren't really going anywhere. Nothing major is going on, and we'll probably have some more, COVID cases going up. But since the lockdown, I guess I felt that this is all just free time. There are no deadlines. When is this going to end? I don't know. I've tried to figure out, why did I stop writing, and that's what I come up with. That I just don't feel like I need to get it done or something. But I've for about 4 years now, I've been working on a novel, and I've actually gotten to maybe I have 4 scenes left, but of course, I then discover I want to go back through and add in stuff. But this is my Poe novel, so it's another Gothic. It's kind of a Gothic horror, gay romance in Key West, because and I had done a screenplay. I don't know why, but I just love Poe. At some point, I did a screenplay. That is The Fall of the House of Usher, transported to contemporary times, and the house is the southernmost house in Key West. So, and Key West is a very gay-friendly place, and also home to all kinds of unusual and wonderful characters, which is where Voluntary Madness was set. I just love Key West. I lived there for a little while. Writers like to go and live in Key West, so I had to do my thing. I did it during the cheapest season for a few months, but and so, in The Fall of the House of Usher, you have the old friend coming back to visit Roderick, and then Roderick, sort of seemingly going insane, but it's a short story. So I really have made the main character an ex-lover of Roderick's, a young guy coming back to his older ex-lover as an architect, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that house. So really, it's a hotel now, but it just, I don't know, to work in Key West and Poe, and of course Poe can put in any sex, so this is based on a lot of sex, and it's just really fun. I don't think it fits into any genre. You could say it's horror, you could say it's romance even. I'm not sure where it fits, but it's probably noir, and it has a lot of dark humor. So
That's amazing. I can't wait to get to read it.
Well, I hope I will finish it.
No, but I understand what you're saying about the COVID and how it affects your writing. Because it happened to me. I had to say, okay, enough of this, and let's get back to be productive. So
it's so you are writing. You didn't take a 6-month break.
Well, I did take, I published a book in January, so I said I'm gonna take some time off, but usually it doesn't take it took me until July to get back to some sort.
That's pretty fast. Yeah, you have to clear out your mind and start over. Yeah. So that's doing pretty well, I think.
Well, I don't know, but so my last question, Vicki, in these difficult times, talking about the pandemic, how has this affected or will affect the future of Hardboiled?
I don't know if the disease itself can really be used in Hardboiled. I read several short stories recently. The New York Times had an edition where they had all stories by various people in the Sunday Review, maybe, that were about, lockdown and the pandemic. But I'm not sure if, you could sustain that in a novel. I suppose you could, but it doesn't really, the idea of a disease it seems too serious to me to base a hard-boiled novel on, because you really can't be playful, with a disease. So I don't know if that will really come in. Now it might be, a mask could be a great device for, a robber or something, and or you could have a character who doesn't know whether to wear a mask or not to wear a mask. I don't know. I could see where some of the details of the lockdown could come in, but not a lot about the disease. Maybe something on the side, I imagine it will affect it. Does everything affect it? I'm not sure.
The reason I asked the question is because it has made us realize how fragile, right, the system is, and how everything can collapse so quick in a cultural, political, financial way, etc. So those are issues that Hardboiled really explores. So it gives more strength to continue being such an important genre to explore.
Yeah, well, that makes sense as a motivation, probably, for characters. Like Katrina, the hurricane, when that went through New Orleans, a lot of people were scrambling after that. So they, maybe had no choice, or felt they had no choice but to go into crime. So I could see that as a basis, for Hardboiled. People that lost their jobs, gives them another reason to misbehave, I guess. So yeah, that might get in there. I hope so. I hope there's some people working on those, since I'm not.
So anyways, thank you so much for sharing these minutes with me. And with the audience. We really appreciate it, and can't wait to get to talk to you soon again, because it's been a wonderful experience.
Well, I really enjoyed it too. Thank you so much. And you're asking me such great questions that was, just really fun to answer, and pretty much easy. You didn't give me any hard ones too much.
So anyways, well, you have a wonderful afternoon, and thank you everybody at the festival, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.